Some of the early adopters for DAS were malls and casinos, airports. We see the most active verticals today as being healthcare number one by far. Fortune 1000 enterprise campuses, we're proud to say that Amazon world headquarters here in town is a solid DAS deployed by Tripower. Hospitality, venues like this, casinos are very active as well. And then we heard earlier from AT&T talking about sports venues. Sports venues are a little bit unique. The carriers have had the lion's share of that initiative, and they're very active. But for every 3 venues there is in a major market like this, there's 300 corporate campuses that make their decisions on an entirely different basis. So the yellow carrier, they were the leader in pioneering DAS. They have a national DAS group with national standards, a national engineering team. They have national budgets. They had a sales-driven focus, which said, if you give me a contract for phones, I'm going to give you a contract for coverage. The purple carrier, they don't have a national group. They handle everything regionally. They pretty much focus on themselves, which is, if I'm going to do a DAS, it's going to be a DAS for me. They like to offload their macro network because they're pretty spectrum constrained. But again, they're willing to plug in if somebody else is willing to build a DAS.
You know, this all started back for me when I started here in Bellevue in 2000. Lincoln Square 1, of course, was being built, and Bellevue had, I want to say, 1, maybe 2 buildings in the city that had any kind of 800 radio system, for lack of a better word, the ability for us to communicate inside these buildings. And it was kind of new. It really wasn't something that the fire service or public safety was big on yet. That all changed in 2001. So we're all familiar with September 11th and the things that transpired from that. And I think our ordinance as it stands today is a big part of what we read and heard about on that day, the inability for people to communicate inside buildings for public safety. You know, I would like to be able to dedicate and know that when a building's being built that I'm going to have a bandwidth from a system that nobody else is going to interfere with. We have parameters in our ordinance that allow carriers to be added to these systems and ways to buffer them out of the band that we use or the frequencies range that we're using. We haven't ever experienced a problem as of yet. I think all the folks that currently have these systems installed are maintaining them well. We've put in provisions that require annual testing, 5-year testing, make sure these systems are staying online and are operable.
So a hotel like this that's fairly new, it has a lot of fiber optic cabling. They might have done some planning and already put a DAS in. Some of the older facilities here in town may not have as much fiber. They may not even have any place to run a piece of coax cable going down a building. So the biggest changes that are coming is they're starting to plan a little bit better when they build the building. So they're putting some of the cabling in, whether it be the fiber, the coax cables, more Cat5, different types of mediums to be able to facilitate installing equipment for wireless purposes, not just cellular, but also Wi-Fi, of course. You wouldn't think of any hotel not having Wi-Fi anymore, so Wi-Fi is kind of standard, so that means there's got to be at least some Cat5.
For the yellow company, we have found that they are actually one of the easier ones to work with. With the purple company, actually working with carriers is probably one of the biggest challenges I think that any integrator has. It's not just a simple call. There's definitely relationships that have to be already in place, and some are easier to work with than others. Some are obviously bigger than others and go through more processes. So the big challenges for really almost any environment that you're going to bring multi-carriers in is to start early. As soon as you, in our case, would have a purchase order, and we know what the scope of work is, we know what the carriers are going to, which carriers we're going to go after to bring onto the DAS. We have to actually start a design process, put the design in front of the carriers, each of them, and have their RF team work with our RF team to decide if the design is something that they will accept. Once that's accepted, or they may ask for some minor changes, that could take a while. So we have to continue to go back to them with maybe a revision of a design. At that point, when you've got all of your carriers agreed to the type of DAS that's going to be installed and the antenna density, then each of the carriers could give us a certain amount of testing that they require ahead of time to provide for them to make sure that indeed they're going to get the coverage that they need.